Here today for T3 and Nancy. Okay, I was practicing it in my head. Schlickenmeyer.
Oh, good job.
Thank you. Is presenting to us today during October's National Disability Awareness Month. And Nancy is the executive director. Is that your title?
Yes, yes.
Of the Right Turn in Pierre, South Dakota,
Yeah.
and graciously volunteered to present this month for us. So
you can see my screen, right? Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm from the Right Turn, the middle part of the state. And welcome. I'm excited for this opportunity to share some information with you about October as Employing People with Disabilities Month. So kind of some of the things we're going to talk about is to explore some appropriate terminology. We're going to look at some strategies to foster an inclusive environment, learn a little bit about deaf culture, and soon you'll know why I have that in there. And you're going to actually learn some American Sign Language today. So our plan is to foster a more inclusive workforce, one where every person is recognized for his or her abilities every day of the month, not just in October, but going forward. So just so you know a little bit more about me and maybe why I bring some of this information, is my husband is deaf. I knew no sign language. Well, I take that back. I knew a little bit of sign language before I met him, to the point that I almost didn't go to the last class of the sign language class I was taking because I was so bad. And they invited the deaf community. So I didn't want to embarrass them or myself, but I went anyway. And sure enough, there was this handsome man there. And so we've been married over 41 years now. And so it pretty much changed my life and my career path. I started working at the School for the Blind because we had then it was called a deaf blind section. I've been an interpreter for the deaf until recently, for all of those years. I'd worked at Communication Service for the Deaf in Aberdeen for 17 years, CSD. Whoops, sorry. And then another career path, I started working with adults with developmental disabilities as community support providers in Aberdeen and then at Pierre here. So you're going to see just a little bit of everything like that. Then in Aberdeen, I actually initiated, I don't know if anybody who's still there knows it was me who got it started, but it's got to be 30 years now, we started a Barrier Awareness Day, where we invited fifth grade elementary students from the area to come in and experience some different disabilities. And it was a whole day. I mean, we had like 200 kids, but it was great. They were able to gain a better understanding. We involved people with disabilities, and it was just a great opportunity, and they're still doing it. So I mentioned that I'm from the Aberdeen area and that I'm currently living in Pierre. We moved here in 2013. And the reason we moved here is because my daughter started working for the state. I had many opportunities to move to Pierre to work. And I always said, why would I want to live in Pierre? Well, then when she moved here with her sons, she has 3 of them, my husband said, I'm going to Pierre. I'm going to go live there. You can come if you want to. And in 1 month, we sold 100 different animals from our hobby farm. And my dad went to a nursing home and we found our way to Pierre. And this is just a quote from the mom who is on the right side here, because it takes a village for her daughter on the left side over there with the baby who's now like 2 or 3. She always said that quote. They're from the Langford area, which is northeast part of South Dakota. And Chelsea, the daughter here, holding the baby, wasn't identified as deaf until she was 18 months, but it changed their lives. She started coming to my preschool in my house and coming to deaf worship once a month and coming to the CSD deaf activities, deaf socials. and we just had a great opportunity to get to know them, expose Chelsea to language. And then I would go to Langford and Pierpont and teach sign language. And Chelsea had an interpreter throughout all those years. That's my husband in the middle there. He's signing "I love you." So if you don't know that sign, I didn't think we had enough time to go through the whole manual alphabet, but it actually takes the I and the L and the Y, and that's the sign for "I love you." And that's my daughter. I do have a son in Aberdeen. Some people don't even know that, or I think I forget about him, but he's there. He's doing well. And again, yeah, that's my husband there in the middle. Chelsea is now a teacher at the Minnesota School for the Deaf. She has her master's. She's helping other families learn sign and is making quite a difference. She actually has one child that stays with her on the weekends when their school's dorm is closed, and it's from the Aberdeen area. So it's just really a small world. But Chelsea never let her deafness be a barrier to her. The community was always embracing her, no matter what her lifestyle was going to be or what her future was going to be. She actually ended up marrying her hearing sweetheart from high school, and he became an interpreter, and they have like 3 kids now. So it's just fun on Facebook to watch them grow. Oops, I went too far. So the reason that Chelsea came, why we have this picture even, because she came, the baby was, I mean, look at how little that baby, the baby was, I swear, just born. I gotta let somebody in. And I think a month later, I let her know that this was happening, that I was being recognized by the governor for the VR Distinguished Service Award. And she said, I gotta come. And they did. And it was like in November, I think. Luckily, there was snow, but it went to Brookings. So they made it home and back in record time. So it was great to see them and to see the baby. We were one of the first to even see the baby. So I do encourage you to recognize efforts in the future of people you work with, businesses you work with, professionals. This is the 2021 Governor Awards. And then I just pulled this off the internet just to kind of reflect on how many people in our nation do live with disabilities, and to kind of see the number of the variety of different disabilities. And then I'm curious, I do have the chat box open. I do encourage you to kind of watch it. I might not read everything that's on there, but do comment if there's something that you know a story about or you want to share too, because this isn't just all going to be me. I'm going to involve you. But I'm curious, does anyone know, and you can either turn on your mic or put it in the chat, what the original, why handicap is, the origin of it, where it started? I don't see anything in the chat box, so this is going to be a learning moment for you. It comes from people having historically standing on street corners with a cap in their hand, begging. People with maybe disabilities, but it wasn't called disabilities then, and it started to just be called handicapped. And later you're going to find that that is not the politically correct term now. You'll still see signs. In fact, one of our board members, I dropped something off at her church and the sign said handicapped access. So I'm gonna have to visit with her a little bit about that. And I wanted to visit a little bit about People First Language. Kathy Snow, she actually has come to Peer. I've seen her present. She talks about how words matter. So these are some examples of, instead of this, what we should say for being politically correct. So instead of saying someone is mentally retarded, one could say he has a cognitive disability. Instead of saying she's autistic, one could say she has autism. Instead of saying he's crippled or he's a quadriplegic, one could say he has a physical disability. Instead of saying he's Downs or Mongoloid, and I'm just curious, does anyone know why they use the term Mongoloid? Again, you can turn on your microphone or put it in the chat. Okay. It's because of the slanted eyes. I actually have ancestry from Mongolia, I guess my family says, and I have a nephew who has Down syndrome. And I never put those connections together. And then people who are more like my dad's age would refer to my nephew as a Mongol, and I'm like, what? I don't get it. So then taking special ed classes, I learned more of why it is. But you would say he has Down syndrome. We would discourage people from using the other term. Instead of saying he's in SPED, you could say he receives special ed services. Instead of saying we or someone is normal, you could say maybe people without disabilities. Instead of using the term brain damaged, maybe say brain injury. And here we go with the handicap parking. Instead of having a handicap parking sign or handicap hotel room, one could say accessible parking or an accessible hotel room. So I have a story. My husband, who is deaf, after ADA, they started having little kits where you would take it to the room, and we'll talk more about the technology. And so I explained that I was going to go off to training and he was going to be there by himself. And so could we have the kit for the visual alerts? And they tried to put us in the handicapped room with the lower bed and a larger bathroom because they just thought if he's deaf, he's handicapped and he needs that room. I said, well, no, that would mean if somebody else came and needed that room, we would be in there. So that was not an option. So just, there's such an education still to this day of people, because that wasn't that long ago that happened. Oh, and there, that's my story. Oops, I have to let somebody else in. And again, if anybody has any other stories, please share them or put it in the chat box so everybody can see. So some more, instead of referring to one's disability, although said he is, she is, what could you do? Instead of using that reference first, use their name. Very good. So you shouldn't even really have to refer to their disability unless there's a reason, you know, there's a reason that you have to reference their disability. Otherwise, refer to them as a people first and a person first, and get to know them and find out more about them, not their disability so much. There is Disability Rights South Dakota, and I'm curious, are you aware of South Dakota Partners in Policy Making? I graduated, I was a partner graduate from year 22, 2014. So yeah, put in the chat box, or I think you can do like a thumbs up, yeah, or a thumbs not up. Okay, so somebody knows about it. Let me expand this so I can see more people. Well aware, good. Anybody not aware? Because that's what I'm trying to do, is to make people more, encourage your awareness. We did have one individual that we support last year who participated, and it is a process. If you're not aware of Partners in Policy Making, it's like a 5-month commitment. Most of the meetings are in Pierre, and that's why I didn't apply until I moved to Pierre, because I wasn't going to drive in the winter to come to Pierre, but people still are. There's usually maybe about 15 to 20 people. And there's a process. You apply, and they have different, either parent or students. I mean, they have different categories that they are looking for, and it's an opportunity to learn more about leadership, advocacy, training opportunities, and the expectation is that people will attend the graduation, which is in Sioux Falls. And there's like over 700 people. Here it is. Dwayne's got one, attended policymaking just last winter. And you didn't talk about mental illness. A mental health condition is the proper way. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't use everything. So I do so appreciate that you share that. A mental health condition is the proper way to talk about a person with that disability. Yes. And that's very common now. And so developing that awareness is very good. Thank you for sharing that, Dwayne. I appreciate that. So if you have a person who, would benefits for some opportunities to learn to advocate for themselves, that's what Partners in Policy Making is about, or to help people learn about the resources to help advocate for them. So either individuals with disabilities or professionals or family members. Then I wanted to introduce or make sure that everyone was aware of person-centered thinking tools. We call them PCT tools. And it was quite common here for a while. Department of Human Services was offering them, but they're a set of easy to use templates that kind of give some structure to conversations. And it's a great way to help support the planning with individuals. I can see them used very easily with our services here. It helps with communication, with understanding. And again, DHS was offering that training. When I logged onto their website on their PCT page, the last time I saw was in 2020. So yes, thank you for sharing those resources in the chat. So if you want to look at those, Helen Sanderson and Associates is also a really good resource. And these are some of the choices: All About Me, Perfect Week, Sorting, Important To, and What's Important For. We use what's working and what's not working all of the time. The Donut, Relationship Circle, Presence to Contribute, Matching Support, Learning Logs, Good Day, Bad Day. I've used that quite a bit. Decision-making profile, decision-making agreement, communication chart, and the 4+1 is another one to help you make some decisions. Sometimes we tried this, and what's left to try. So I'm curious, have you used PCT tools? So you can either do a thumbs up, or I can't see the camera, just so you know. I have so many other screens up that I don't see your camera. So if you could do something in the chat box, or do the thumbs up with the participant list with your tools, that would be great. That kind of gives me, I should have one more screen for you. Okay, I did see a thumbs up, good. So I have a poll. Every now and then we'll do some of these polls. Is American Sign Language universal throughout the world, throughout the nation? Put in the chat box, what do you think? Yes or no? Or again, I'm monitoring in the participant list. So I see some yeses, I see some nos. Okay. Good. I appreciate your participation. Not in every country. There we go. So American Sign Language is used in the United States and Canada. It's actually based more on French, and there are geographic variances. There's like accents. Even in South Dakota, somebody, because we come from all over, probably like 90% of the signs are very similar, but once in a while there's like, ooh, where'd you learn that one? And it's not that it's wrong, but it's just different. Like happy birthday for some reason has to have many, many variances. And so sometimes when we sing the song, we like do 2 or 3 different ones. It just depends on, because you never know in your group who is going to be there and which one that they use. So again, it's not that it's wrong or that it's right, but it's based on that French influence. Other countries then have their own sign language. And interesting enough, you would think that in England, British Sign Language would be very similar to American Sign Language, and it's not. They're every once in a while I'll be watching a movie and they start signing, like, whoa. And or on Pinterest, I'll try to pull up something and it's not. So what they do for the finger spelling, instead of one hand making all the shapes from A through Z, they kind of point at the digits, and it's quite different. So next time you're watching a movie, you might wonder if they're doing American Sign Language or British Sign Language. And again, every country has their own version, except Canada and the United States. Another poll. So do you know American Sign Language? Put it in the chat box if you know a little bit. Are you quite fluent, or have you not had a chance to explore? Okay, so I'm seeing some no's. Well, today then you are going to have an opportunity to learn some sign. A little, the alphabet, good. Great. It's been a while. And then what happens, I'm glad you mentioned that, is because if you had a chance to learn some, especially when you were young, it'll be there. I always say it's up here hiding. And then if you're exposed again and you're with other people who are starting to sign, it's like, oh, I remember that. So a story I have is my grandmother. I didn't know she knew some sign language. Here she had a neighbor girl who was deaf. And back in the day, it was called the Rochester method. Instead of signs, they finger spelled everything. And that's like a lot, like every letter for every word. And so when I brought my husband home to meet the family, my grandpa just talked louder, thinking that would help. That didn't. Dwayne took a course in 1983 and stayed through to the end, but he didn't graduate. Well, it's going to be up here, Dwayne. Next time you're around, it's gonna come back. And so she started fingerspelling to my husband, and I was like blown away. And in all of those, gosh, maybe it was like 50 years, she'd never used it. And we only had to help her with just a couple of the letters. She did amazing. And she was the only one who could communicate with them, besides me. And honestly, when we first started communicating, we wrote notes, we drew pictures. But it is a language that can be easily learned. So I'm going to sign some words, and I'll have you guess what I might be signing. So do turn your microphone on, because I need to hear that you're catching these. Okay, so here's one sign, and I hope you can see it. I'm trying to make sure that I'm in the camera.
House.
House, good job. So practice with me. And again, I don't have the camera on that I can see you too. So watch each other. Help each other out. So you have the roof and then the sides. And then what we can do with American Sign Language is we can incorporate the adjectives. So if we're talking about a big house or a little house, or maybe two houses, what do you think? Well, here, I have the answers there. Sorry, I'm going to put those back in my, I thought I had animated everything and I didn't. Darn.
House is still an easy one, Nancy. We would have got that even without that list.
I think so. Okay, so then I take it back. If I didn't read that, this is how would you sign? So let's go back to, here we go. How would you sign? So let me see if I can try to get to my camera. Show me how you would sign drink. Maybe if I minimize here. How? Okay, do it one more time, because now I got it. Okay, good. Yes, that is the sign for drink. You take a cup and you drink.
Or tree.
All right, so, okay, we'll all be honest. So let's 5 o'clock on Friday. You can look at your coworker and say, okay, time, let's go get a drink. Okay, and they'll know what you mean. Okay, how would you sign tree?
Oh,
I'm watching you.
trying to remember.
So you gotta have your camera on.
I think it's
So I can see you practicing.
that.
Okay, I see some that are getting really close. Jennifer's pretty close. Okay, so I have my flat hand here. That's my horizon. And Jennifer, here's the twigs and the branches. So I have this hand up like this. Yes, practice with me. So what happens is this is tree, but we're not, okay. My camera's hard because it's cutting off my hands. Okay, let me know if you're not seeing me. Okay, out there I can see myself. So what happens in South Dakota though is most trees don't do like this. They're like whoosh back and forth because we have so much wind here, especially up in Aberdeen where it's so flat. How would you sign baby? Because that's what we sign baby. So the thing is, you didn't think you knew sign, and actually you knew more sign than you thought you did. Okay, let's go on and
Sorry.
more here.
And
So we're going to go through and do this guess the snack activity, because one thing we often talk about is food. And I thought that would be a common thing that you could talk about in the workplace. So I will start at number one. Number one is cookie. Now I got to get my camera back so I can kind of see you guys. Cookie, you have the flat hand for your plate. And this is a C, and you're going to make cookie cutters. And you just turn that. Like you're cutting out at Christmas. Cookie. Okay. Next one is candy. Now what happens is there's different variations. Now, a more common sign for candy, got Halloween coming up pretty soon, is the index finger. Think of cavities, candy. Okay. Next one, number 3 there is cake. So again, I have a flat hand for my plate. I take a C and I go out. Cake. What do you think number 4 is?
Banana.
Banana. So your index finger becomes the banana, and then you have to peel it. I love the participation. Thank you for practicing these things. And you know, the thing is, if you have a niece or nephew, child, home at grandkid, practice this with them because they will learn it and they'll remember it the rest of their lives. Number 5 is fruit. This is the F hand shape, and fruit is right here in the cheek. Number 6, this is the P hand shape. The thumb is in between the index finger and the middle finger. Looks kind of like this. And then you take and do a Z with that. So what do you think we just signed?
Pizza?
Pizza. Yes, pizza.
Does it matter whether you use your left hand or your right hand?
Good question. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. So if you're right-handed, you should use your right hand to sign. If you're left-handed, use your left hand. Some people don't establish a dominant hand, and then it's kind of like a tennis match. You're here and you're there, so it's hard to watch. And you want to, not have your signs bouncing a lot, and especially when you do the finger spelling. Okay, the next one, this is the F, and we're dipping it in ketchup. F that we're dipping in ketchup would be
French fries.
French fries. I have a French fry story for you. This was before going to Burger King when they had automated beverage dispensers. And they didn't even have automated ketchup things. Everything was behind the counter. That was, way before COVID. And so my husband, I went to the restroom. I'd ordered, usually I do the ordering. And then I went to the restroom thinking, all I got to do is take the food to the table. And my husband had this funny look on his face when I got back. And there was a cup of ice. Remember, I said that was before self-dispensing beverages. So I'm like, what's the cup of ice? He goes, I don't know. I asked for ketchup. He even pretended he had a hamburger and he took it apart and he was going like that. And the guy gave him a cup of ice. So I'm like, okay, maybe he panicked. Deaf person talking, French fries, ketchup, cup of ice. I don't know. So I always theorized that's why they started making the automated ketchup dispensers so that deaf people didn't have to ask for that. So that's my French fry story. Next one, you're pulling this and you go like this. Pop or soda. So another good, I mean, some of these signs you can just use in the office. You're walking by and I'm like, do you need a pop? Or you in a meeting. So John, even though we're recording it, we could be talking now at meetings because we're all here learning this and John's not able to be with us. So, okay, next one is ice cream. Just like you have an ice cream cone. One of my favorite signs of all time is number 10. What is left that you think this could be?
Popcorn.
Popcorn. So you have two fists. This is an S hand shape, and you pop, 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 pop. Isn't that fun? And the very last one is apple. So you take, this is actually an X, put it in your cheek, kind of like we did fruit, same location. There we go. So you have that. I just have tons of handouts and things. I've been teaching American Sign Language for many, many years. So I have tons of things. If you ever need something, you just let me know. Okay, get to the next one. All right, I want to show you some other common signs. And then let me turn my camera back or so I can see everybody. Please, these are ones that I thought you could probably use in the office. Maybe you'll have a deaf person come in. You never know. Please is an open hand. I was going to stand up so you can see me a little bit. On the chest, open hand on the chest. Move my camera down just ever so slightly. Thank you. You're blowing someone a kiss. Thank you. Help. Open hand again, and you're going to help. Very good. Work, two fists. And you want to make sure that your fists are pointing down. There are some signs that if you do them incorrectly, you could be signing something X-rated, just so you know. So you got to be careful. Learn it the correct way. That's why I'm trying to watch and make sure you're doing it right. Paper, two open hands. And this, remember that some of you are probably too young, but when we had the old ditto machines that you cranked, that makes sense because the papers would just fly. So that's paper. Sit. These are U's and you go down one time. Chair would repeat it. Nouns are double motion. Wait. You have two open hands and you kind of wiggle them. Kind of wait. Yes is an S shaking. Yes, like your head nodding. And no is a thumb. Got to get so you can kind of see on my two fingers. No. And you want to sign with intensity too. So you have a kid who's asked, several times, finally the answer is no. You sign with intensity. Okay, thank you for practicing with me. So the advantages of using ASL is it supports communication. Maybe you have a sore throat and it's not easy to communicate verbally. If somebody else knows enough sign, then, or even a little bit of sign, it helps with communication. Sometimes there could be medical reasons. My sister, when she was on life support, before she passed away, her last communication was in sign language. My niece went and my sister was trying to talk to the nurses. She was trying to fingerspell to them. And so she was doing O2. She wanted more oxygen. And then she fingerspelled fan. So it was neat that she had learned, and she was really pretty good. Because my husband had worked on her farm too, and then her daughter was learning sign too. So it's neat. You never know when you might have the opportunity to use ASL. And then again, if you have children or especially infants can sign before they have the vocal capabilities to talk, and they can do it very effectively. But be cautious. Don't get a baby sign book. Get one that you make sure it says American Sign Language. because they might as well learn the right thing if they're learning it. So what do you think? Use your thumbs up in your, or in the chat box. Everyone with hearing loss is hearing impaired. Is that an appropriate terminology? Everyone with hearing loss is referred to as hearing impaired. You can oh, I see a thumbs down. Okay. I see a yes. Okay. Actually, to be politically correct, I see some no's. To be politically correct nowadays, we don't want to label everyone with a hearing loss as hearing impaired. Most deaf people don't think of their hearing as impaired. They think of themselves as deaf. So you would use, what do you think you would use? I got the blanks there. Instead of hearing impaired, politically correct terminology nowadays is?
One would be hard of hearing, but I don't know the first one.
Yep, hard of hearing, or my husband is
Deaf.
deaf. Yep, so deaf or hard of hearing. So that's how we kind of put it all together. It's one or the other. Because there are some people that are deaf, but they might have a little bit of residual hearing. They're maybe hearing some things, but they still call themselves deaf because there's a deaf culture. And then we're going to learn a little bit more about that. So what's the term that people, that deaf people use for us? For people who can hear, what terminology do they use for us? Hearing. Very good, Nikita. Yes. So if I go to a social where there's deaf adults and hearing people, in introductions, my husband will introduce, this is my wife. She's deaf. She's hearing. They want to know who fits in with this deaf culture. I'm so-and-so. I'm deaf. Politically correct. Yes. Use deaf or hard of hearing, and they refer to us as hearing. Okay, what do you think? To get the attention of a deaf person who's looking the other way, you should just kind of wave at them in their face. Thumbs up, thumbs down. And remember, I can't always see the cameras. So yes, put it in the chat box or the participant one. Good. Yes, that is the best way to talk. Okay, if you see a deaf person and they're looking the other way, it's just a light tap on the shoulder, just a real light tap on the shoulder. I was at a deaf gathering, a group of our interpreters, and this one gal who was deaf, she was so excited to be able to see everyone else that she, and I was oh, that's what it was. I was the only interpreter around, and there were hearing people. So she kept getting my attention, and it was a light tap on me. So yes, they liked the light tap, but I left almost bruised because she was so excited to be able to communicate through me what she wanted to say. So, oh, goodness. What do you think? Anyone who knows sign language can interpret for someone who is deaf? Put it in the chat. I see some no's. I see a thumbs down. No, because of differences. Yes. In South Dakota, we are, I think maybe one of the first states, I don't know. But we do have a South Dakota registry that it's a class 2 misdemeanor if you interpret for pay for someone who is deaf and they find out about it or somebody has a complaint. So because I'm not certified anymore, I decided that since I'm not around a lot of deaf people, there's only 2 deaf people in town. My receptive language was diminishing. I wasn't able to understand them, and language changes. There's new signs that are developed, and I wasn't keeping up with it because I was only communicating with my husband. So I decided not to renew. And when I saw other deaf people, I'm like, at the Capitol one day for Disability Awareness Day, I'm like, I don't know what they're signing anymore. I can do a one-on-one, but when there's a whole group of them. So yes, they would need to request an interpreter. I could interpret maybe for church for free, but I should be asking, not doing that. Anyone with a hearing loss is aware of deaf culture or is a part of that deaf community. What do you think? Put it in the chat box. Or try to use your thumb up or thumb down in the participant. I see some no's. Good. Good, good, good. Yes, the answer is no, because what could happen is, oops, they can, it could be somebody who's developed a hearing loss, maybe over time, just a progressive hearing loss. So they may never even learn to sign. For someone to be absorbed into the deaf community and be a part of that community and reflect on deaf culture, there has to be these things in place. They have to have the same beliefs, the same values. There's some patterns of behavior that people probably didn't know about deaf people. So one story that I have is in Aberdeen, we had one gal. Deaf people are just very blunt. And you might have some hearing people who are pretty blunt, but deaf people are even more blunt. And I had just got new glasses. She said, "Oh, you got some new glasses, and glasses new?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Oh, they're ugly." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So you just never know what they might be thinking about. And we sometimes would be thinking that, but we wouldn't say it. Deaf people are just very straightforward often. It's a unique language, American Sign Language. They love to celebrate the achievements of other deaf people. And then there is a group of people who are deaf that associate with each other. Usually they might have gone to School for the Deaf. Well, now in South Dakota, the School for the Deaf there's no residential. Everything is mainstreamed, and those students are either going to Minnesota or are absorbed in a mainstream environment. And then they might have some schools where, yes, they have interpreters, but a lot of them went to school with other deaf people, and it's like that's their family. So technology for deaf people has changed over time. Does anyone know what this is? I have just so you see what the real size of it is. Anybody know what that is? Or had a chance to ever use one?
It's how they communicate with the phone,
Yes.
but I don't know what it's called.
Okay,
Sorry.
you got a good start, Stephanie. Anybody know what it's called? Okay, it is a TTY. TTY. And then what happened is this company Ultratech started calling it a TDD because they had a message, telephonic device for the deaf or something. Braille, it looks like a Braille maker, but it's actually a TTY for people who are deaf to communicate with another TTY. So this was state of the art back in the, maybe 80s, 90s, probably 90s. And then over time it's changed. And then what happened is, I think I'll talk about the relay service in just a little bit. Also, there's technology for people for independent living. So because I want to touch on not just always about deaf people, even though that's been a lot of my experience. So people who are deaf, there's doorbells, closed captioned, alarm clocks, fire alarms, weather radios. But people with some physical disabilities maybe are using MedMinders. In the chat box, is there any other technology that you have worked with someone or maybe a family member has obtained for any other disabilities? I mean, Dwayne talked about the Braille maker for people who are blind. I mean, tons of different resources that are available, and it changes over time. So if you have had an experience of some other technology, please get, oh yes, good. So the Kurzweil reader, yes. Please share them so that we can all learn from each other, from our experiences. So the picture here is a visual doorbell. That would be the ADA one. A pen that records the notes. I honestly got that and I haven't used it yet. I was working somewhere and my boss always talks so fast and she would expect us to remember everything. So I thought, I'm going to trick her. I'm going to take a pen and I'm going to use that system, but I haven't honestly used it yet. So someday maybe I'll find somebody who could really benefit from that. So the relay service, what has happened is over time, people who had this TTY would have to have another TTY to talk to. So the relay service was invented to be a go-between. It was a person sitting there and somebody would call with their TTY, another relay person would be there and then type and take in the calls from the hearing person. So maybe they're going to order pizza on a rainy day. It was a third-party connection. Does anybody know? Oh, here's some other ones. So please read in the chat box. We got a lot of things happening over here. Yes, as far as medications, yes. Scanning, they have MedMinders. There's a lot of things for technology. Does anybody know the number for the relay service? You've heard of 611, 511, 711. Oh, I just gave it away. 711 was the relay service. It used to have an 800 number and then they shortened it up to 711. There's a program in South Dakota, and when I was at CSD, I did that for 17 years, where there's equipment for people with hearing loss, deaf or hard of hearing. It's through the Department of Human Services, and the relay service is all available in South Dakota. Changed over time, though. So what's happened is things have just changed as far as the TTYs are much smaller. The first TTY my husband had took up like the whole desk. It was just huge. They have mobile devices, they have amplified phones, they have captioned phones. Those are nice for those people that have that progressive loss. They can read the message and then also hear. So that I've provided that equipment. So how do deaf people communicate with technology now? Trust me, this is, my husband doesn't even use his TTY. And it gets frustrating sometimes because if we have a business call and they want to talk to him, they're like, well, have him call back on his TTY. Like, we don't even have a TTY. So you're gonna have to talk to me. And you got all these confidentiality issues, but that TTY call would take a half an hour because you have to type and take turns. There was a message, go ahead and stop keying. And English wasn't their first language. ASL is their first language. So most deaf people, not all of them, but most deaf people we're still reading at a 3rd or 4th grade reading level. And so that was difficult for them to have to now use a TTY. So video relay has been invented where they can sign and then there's another person who would voice, or FaceTime where they're signing to each other. Lots of texting, which is a good way to communicate with a deaf person. Instead of writing a note, you could text it and just show them that. There is a program for other disabilities. So maybe there's a speech impairment. There's the TAD program, and then there's the TED program. Okay, so I do want to let you know more about those resources. TAD program, communication adaptive devices, and then the TED program is for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Oh, we got a new message here. So if you have any other experiences, please share those. 10 minutes into the top of the hour. Are you telling me my time frame, Kim? Yes, okay. 10 minutes at the top of the hour. Okay. And what is my time frame? When am I totally done? I have 4 minutes left. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's go. What do you think? Deaf people excellent at reading lips? No. We are probably better speech readers than them. Okay. Most deaf people have deaf parents or not. 10% of deaf people have deaf parents. What do you think? No, it's 90% of deaf people have hearing parents, now that you know that terminology. Well, let's see what else we can cover here in just a few minutes. Recognizing disabilities has changed over time. What do you think? Franklin Roosevelt was seen using his wheelchair in the public regularly? Jennifer knows that was a no. He actually invented his own wheelchair. So using a kitchen chair. I did have some other resources, but let's see what else I can come up with here. Okay. The greatest barrier for people with disabilities would be the attitudinal barriers. That is what people, of all the people I've worked with, it's someone else's attitude about working with someone with a disability. So a common saying is nothing without us about us. So you should always be including people who have some disability when you're discussing them. Discuss with them, not about them. Another term, special needs. A lot of people think it's kind of like fingernails on the chalkboard because it makes it sound like it's very limiting and they don't have high expectations. So it's really a term that people with parents sometimes use, and people with disabilities really prefer not to think of it like that. So instead of assuming that somebody needs help, just ask them, never assume. And then there's a lot of people throughout history that had some disabilities. Did you know Thomas Edison had dyslexia and then he became deaf at the age of 7? And it forced him to think harder and think creatively, which led him to the quote, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. We do offer Barton tutoring for people with dyslexia. And then the resources. So put in the chat box other resources that you know. Very good. I just learned different than lots of other people. Other senses become stronger. There's Dakota Link, always refer to VR, Independent Choices, Western Resources. So any resources that you have utilized, please put in the chat box so someone else can utilize them. And then the hidden disabilities. So I saw this on Facebook. Allowing a student with a hidden disability to struggle academically or socially when all that is needed for success are appropriate accommodations and explicit instruction is no different than failing to provide a ramp for a person in a wheelchair. So what is that device for dyslexia? It's called Barton Tutoring, and it's a tutoring program. It's a system, and you can. We provide it here. There are a few trained people in South Dakota, but you can Google Barton Tutoring and find out. Okay, so I have just a very, very, very short. Kim, can I show this? Okay, I gotta move some stuff so I can shoot. Oh, sure, then I did it away with it. Well, I actually, in moving all my things around, took it out. So what happens is there's only 39 seconds, and this if you Google Facebook, October is National Disability Employment, and you get, let's put this swag walk in there. It's the neatest video of a employer talking about how he's going to learn new signs every week, every day, and he's not going to, depend on an interpreter. And this is happening in Ohio. So we want it to happen in South Dakota too. If you would be so kind to put in the chat box what you're leaving with, what was your kind of your aha moment, or there's something you want to study up more about, or you need more resources, put it in the chat box and I can either respond and putting in that Barton tutoring message. What are you leaving with? What are you going to reflect on? What didn't you know? I would love to hear what you learned. And if there's anything else that I can help you with, I'd love to hear that. Still going to try to get into. Kim, could you read from the chat box? Some of those?
Sure.
Okay.
Brenda said common signs and doing them was interesting. Dwayne, this was great. When and where is the ASL class? The lip, I didn't know special needs was inappropriate. No, my son does not like to be called special needs because he learns differently. It doesn't make him special, he said.
Right, right.
Well, any questions for Nancy in the next couple minutes? I appreciate your personal insight, Nancy. It always makes it more real when you can relate it to people's personal lives. So I appreciate that.
Oh yes, I have so many stories that we could go on and on. But I do appreciate this opportunity. I might actually have found that video. I found the website. Nope, I didn't. But I do encourage you to look for that. Swagwalk, Ohio. I just thought it was really neat how they are having the opportunity to meet their needs and not to get to know them as a person. I know I had to worked with many employers. They would learn sign, and my husband worked somewhere that was a team environment. Lots of people had the opportunity to learn sign there.
Did put down the link if people want to tap on it and look at it. I think I have the right one. Well, thank you, Nancy, for your time today. And thanks, everyone. We will see everybody in November for our next T3.
Yes, let me know if you have any questions. Thank
Have
you
a good
so
day.
much. Okay, bye.